stand and have our pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Certainly want to welcome all of you here tonight. We have plenty of room over here on the left, the right, to our debate between our Republican candidates. Tonight's moderator is Dr. Al Haywood. He's founder of Catholic Christian Counseling. We'll call him up now. He will bring our candidates up. They will begin to introduce themselves. And I hope you enjoy our debate tonight. Dr. Haywood.
Thank you, John, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you here tonight. Thank you for coming out. Let me say one thing to you, first of all. If you would please, make sure and silence your cell phones or any other electronic devices that you may have with you. If you've ever been a public speaker, you'll know that is very distracting, and will take your attention from where it is to be. I'm going to call to the platform this evening. First of all, Mr. Rick Allen. Very good. Mr. Delvis Dutton. We're going to ask you to sit in alphabetical order. You've already seen it. Mr. John Stone. Miss Diane Van. And Mr. Eugene Yu. Will that all then get settled? They were talking about being concerned about their chairs. Actually, I'm the one that's concerned about the chair. I'm going to lay out just a few ground rules for you. First of all, welcome to the stage and thank you for coming to Dublin, Georgia. A few things that we need to point out. And first, we're going to ask you to make sure and notice our timekeeper. She is sitting on the front row with a yellow card and a red card, and you are familiar with what those things mean, I'm sure. We're going to ask you to keep your answers to 90 seconds. And first of all, though, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to introduce yourself, again paying attention to the time limit of 2 minutes. And we'll start with Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Al. It's great to be here with you today. I want to thank the Lawrence GOP for all their hard work. I want to thank all of you for coming out. You know, for 2.5 centuries, this nation was the envy of the world. And we ask ourselves, what has happened? What kind of nation are we going to leave to our children and grandchildren? You know, Proverbs says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So what is the problem? I really believe the problem is leadership. And that's why I'm running for the United States Congress. My wife and I have been members of the same church in Augusta for over 40 years. We've raised 4 children. We're very proud of my children. They're all happily married and they're gainfully employed. And I tell you, that's quite an accomplishment in this day and time. I'm also very proud that I have 6 grandchildren. In fact, my wife is not here tonight because, you know, we got a lot going on in Augusta. And my entire family is in town for the first time in 2 years, celebrating the birth of our newest granddaughter, who is now 3 weeks old. And she refused to leave that group, but she does send her regards, and she told me not to talk very long. That's what she does for me. She kicks me and tells me to hold it down. But like I said, we got our 7th grandchild coming in next week. So let me just say this. We know how to fix our problems in this country. We do a good job. Y'all have done a good job here in Lawrence County. Until we stop Washington, they're creating more problems than we can solve. That's what I want to do. I want to beat John Barrow, and I want to stop Washington. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Dutt.
Thank you all for being here. I appreciate everybody coming out. It's good to be in Lawrence County. I have a lot of fond memories and a lot of solid relationships that I've developed over the last 14 years with people here in Lawrence County. When I started my well drilling company when I was 22 years old back in Tatnall County. I'm from Glenville. While attending Georgia Southern, I met my wife, and working at UPS, I started a well drilling company. Through that process, we were blessed with 2 children. Little boy, 6 years old, and my little girl is 4. And going through the process of running my business, loving the relationships that I was making, I was frustrated every day with where we were headed in this country. Bothered by it every time I watched the news at night. Feeling like that the Republic was on fire. And in 2010, while attending revival at our church at Trinity Baptist in Bullitt County, I realized my wife was holding my, at that time, 7-week-old daughter. And I realized that I was unwilling to do what I expected others to be doing. So after a 28-day journey, I answered that call and was elected the state representative to represent Tatnall, Evans, and Wayne County. In that capacity, for the last 4 years, I have a very consistent example of doing what I knew to be right because I knew it to be right. And putting aside politics and voting my convictions and following my principles. I'm in this race for Congress tonight in the 12th District because I'm the only candidate that understands what it takes to win an election. And the example that I have for that consistency over 4 years of a proven conservative constitutional record matched up against John Barrow will win this thing for us in November. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Dutt. Time has expired. Thank you very much. Mr. John Stone.
First off, thanks to is this coming out okay? Yeah, I guess so. Through the Lawrence County Republican Party, Cat in particular, for all the hard work in putting this debate together. It's always a great pleasure for me to come over here to Dublin. My father was born here in Dublin nearly 100 years ago. And I got the biggest coincidence in my life during the St. Patrick's Day Festival a couple of weeks ago. John Hall, who is here tonight somewhere, John, has been playing my great-grandfather in the graveyard tour deal y'all have over here. And I want to hear some of the stories before this is over. So thank y'all for letting me be over here. I love to be in Dublin in particular. Tonight, I think you're going to hear the great debate over the triple P's. Plans, pledges, or parables concerning what we're going to do about this country. It's time we had some definite plans on what we do. When you came in the door, you may have noticed outside on our table, we had very specific proposals that we have up for this country. We have some things we have to change here that I learned we needed to change through the work that I did with Congressman Charlie Norwood in Washington, Max Burns, and John Carter. And that before we do anything to take our country back, we've got to take our party back. We've got to build a unified party again and end the civil war that we've been having within the Republican Party, in which just this last week we had the Speaker go down to Amelia Island to raise money against conservatives. That's got to stop. We've got to have a plan to take our party back, a plan to take our district back, and a plan to take our country back in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Ms. Diane Van.
Thank you very much. It's very good to see you again. In 2010, I ran for office. It was District 8. Lawrence County was part of District 8 at that time. With redistricting, Lawrence fell into 12. So it's very nice to be back here. I'm running because really the same reason I ran in 2010. Our country is in grave trouble. nurse, and I'm an educator. I had no interest in really being political until I listened to President Obama. And he sounded like my tour guide in East Berlin back in the 70s when the Berlin Wall was up and the Iron Curtain was up. I talk about that in my book, and I have copies of it available for you, so if you haven't gotten one already, please pick one up as you leave. Running for office, for Congress, they don't ask for a birth certificate, they don't ask for a driver's license with a picture ID, they don't ask for a social security number. They ask for an address. And they want you to prove that you're a serious candidate by getting or spending $5,000. That's what I did in 2010. Nobody asked for any identification. You give them an address in Georgia, and then it's fill in the blank, which district you want to run for. When the Founding Fathers were deciding this, they realized that the districts would change boundaries every 10 years with the census, and they didn't want the politicians' address to figure in. So it's been open like that. Running here in 2012, again, the same process, except they didn't ask me to spend or be given $5,000. They realized I was a serious candidate. So I went ahead and did have to show a driver's license when I gave a personal check and be qualifying. So I just want you to know qualifying was 3% of the candidate's, John Barrow's salary.
Thank you, Ms. Mann.
$5,220. Thank you.
Because of our time limit, we must move on. Mr. Yu.
I'm always asking myself, am I doing the right thing at the right time, in the right place, with the right reason? Good evening, my fellow Georgian and Republican, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eugene Yu. I am very humble and honored to be with you this evening. I believe in the promise of America because as an American immigrant, I have lived it. As a young boy, I came with my family from the Caribbean to here, land of opportunity. 42 years later, I am proof this dream is real. I am pure rural American dream. I started work at the factory when I was a 10th grade in high school at the midnight shift, and also worked at the grocery store and the volunteer firefighter during the weekend. And I did the entire my high school year. After graduating from the high school, I become full-time firefighter and still going to college. And later, I was enlisted as a U.S. Army as a military policeman. After honorable discharge, I was deputy sheriff in Richmond County. And later, I became the businessman I was doing for the refurbishing the military vehicle for the U.S. government for the last 20-some years. Washington is out of control. Washington needs a new blood. Washington needs a new idea. Washington needs a new solution. I'm the person going to do that. I want to say what needed to be said for my 12th district, my constituency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. And now we're going to move on to our questions. And for our candidates, I would like you to know that we're going to start with Mr. Allen on the first question. We will start with Mr. Dutton on the second question, and therefore we will continue on down the line so that everybody will have an opportunity to answer first, and everybody will have an opportunity to answer last. Very good. We will start with question number one, Mr. Allen. What do you see as the most pressing economical challenge we have in the 12th district, and how will you address it?
The problem we have in the 12th district is not unlike the problem we have across the entire nation, and that's Washington and the inept fiscal responsibility of those who we have in the past elected to service, both in the Congress and both in the executive branch. This deficit, y'all, that we have is creating uncertainty. We're pumping $4 trillion into this economy. We've already pumped $4 trillion into this economy. We've never done that before. We don't know what the result of that is. So like me, I'm a small business person. I've created jobs. I've balanced budget. I only had one deficit year in 37 years of business. That's because the company went bankrupt and owed us over $1 million. But we still paid our bills and we got through it. But I'm telling you, every small business person in the 12th district is thinking the same thing I'm thinking. Is do we take continued risk when this government is totally out of control? We must restore fiscal responsibility in Washington. I've done that in my business. I've done it 37 years, and I have a proven track record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I'll repeat the question, Mr. Dutton. What do you see as the most pressing economical challenge we have in the 12th district, and how will you address it?
I'll say that one of the biggest concerns that I have is you don't see people 40 and younger starting businesses in this country, much less in the 12th district. If they are running a business, they're trying to maintain it. And the concerns that we all have are where the country's headed with the national debt, with the spending problems that we're seeing, with the government regulations that we're seeing across the board. We have government control in education and healthcare now, and now we're losing the private sector. And we have no representation in our elected offices because people are too busy trying to maintain that office after being elected, instead of doing what they know is right and following the foundation that this country is founded on. And I truly believe that if we will get the regulations out of the way and get back to the foundation that this country has stood for, we can address the issues that we have in the 12th district, not to mention the rest of the country. But I've said many times that I don't feel like we can solve the problems unless we strengthen our state legislatures. And the lack of focus that we have in that, and we're allowing the national government to dictate policy that we allow to trickle down. We're not seeing the exercising the rights of the state, the sovereign right of the states. So until we strengthen that, we're going to see this constant erosion.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. I will ask you, Mr. Stone, the same question. What do you see as the most pressing economical challenge we have in the 12th district, and how will you address it?
The biggest challenge is an out-of-control federal government and a Republican Party with leadership that won't stand up to stop it. I don't know how many of you noticed in your news this week, at the tail end of last week, our current Speaker, John Boehner, called for a voice vote in the House of Representatives. That means none of our current members of the House have their vote recorded to increase the deficit and do a repair job on Obamacare in the same vote. That was hidden from the public record until after the vote was taken. As long as we've got leadership like that, we're not going to be capable of attacking this federal deficit, the out-of-control spending, and it's going to bankrupt this country, destroy our jobs, ruin our children and grandchildren's future. We've got to have leadership that will stand up. That's why I became the first House candidate in America to sign the Republican Trust Pledge that if I'm elected, I'm going to vote out the entire House leadership we have now and replace them with true conservatives that'll stand up for our Constitution, stand up against the Obama administration and Obamacare, put in a balanced budget, and fight again. Until we have that, while we have the kind of leadership that we do in Washington right now that caves in with that shameful voice vote last week, we can't address the problem. That's the problem right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Ms. Vann, what do you see as the most pressing economical challenge we have in the 12th district, and how will you address it?
Well, I agree with the others. It's the federal government. You know, there should have been a deepening of the Savannah Harbor. That's been in process for over 10 years. That should have been done long ago. John Barrow had Savannah in the District 12 until 2010. His being over that area didn't matter. The federal government still ignored the will and wishes of the people. Progress is being hampered, and we really have to look to the United Nations, and we have to look at something called Agenda 21, and the things that they want as far as no growth within the United States proper. You look at their map, and you see we're starting to conform to the map of the Agenda 21. So that involves our president writing over 900 executive orders. Bush only wrote less than 100 for his 8 years, and we've already got over 900 from Obama and his czars, and they're all to implement something called Agenda 21. I call it the Communist Manifesto of 1992. So if you're not familiar with it, please look it up. There's a lot about it on the internet. But until we remove the Democratic Party leadership, and I call for their impeachment now, we will be stuck in this morass of no growth and no jobs, and that's on purpose.
Thank you, Ms. Vann. Mr. Yu, what do you see as the most pressing economical challenge we have in the 12th District, and how will you address it?
People. People learn the personal responsibility. We all know that John F. Kennedy said once before, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. That is the Democrat. Now, today's our society, too many people looking for the government to do something for them. We must change that idea. In Washington, they are completely out of common sense. And if we continue to let the things going, then we're going to be end of the cliff. Washington needs a U-turn. We must tell the folks that enough is enough. They cannot spend more than what we get. This, I will exercise. I am the pure American dream. If I can do it, they can do it. Everybody can do it. I came to this country with nothing. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. There was one point I couldn't even speak the English. But here I am. I'm running for U.S. Congress. If people understand, if I can do it, and they can do it. And we still got hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. With our next question, we will begin with Mr. Dutton. Where do you stand regarding immigration, and how will you address this issue?
First off, I have never been, nor will I ever be, for amnesty. We have to completely forget about even considering that. The first thing that we have to do is lock down the border. And whatever it takes. We have the strongest military in world history, but the weakest borders in the world. So the first thing, before we can talk about a comprehensive approach of what to do with those that are here illegally, we have to make sure that we lock that down. And especially to the satisfaction of the border states and what we're seeing that they're having to deal with on a daily basis. Cannot even imagine. But as far as, once we're in that position, then we can have an approach of how we address those that are here illegally. And I think that's the first thing that we're going to have to address. And it's absolutely alarming that we see what we're having on the border states right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Stone, where do you stand regarding immigration, and how will you address this issue?
To start with, simply against amnesty. And I'll put a little story behind that. Back when I worked for Congressman Norwood, he served on the House Immigration Reform Caucus, and this was back in 2005, in the first year that the Minutemen went to the border. The Immigration Reform Caucus asked us, myself and a retired Marine colonel, go to the border, don't tell the Border Patrol you're coming, and see what's going on the ground and report back to us so we'll know what's actually happening without it being filtered through the media and through the administration. We did stay on the border for a week, crossed multiple times back and forth into Mexico just to see how easy it would be. When I worked for Congressman Carter in 2010, we did a return trip and went down and started in Laredo and drove 1,000 miles up the border to El Paso in my wife Deborah's Jeep, which she still hadn't forgiven me for that, and talked with our sheriffs, our border patrol, our landowners about what we need to do. And what I did when I came back is I wrote a piece of legislation, two pieces, for Congressman Carter, one that allows our border governors to call forth their National Guard at federal expense and shut the border down once and for all, because we cannot rely on the Obama administration to do it. Our governors can. Secondly, to provide the resources to our border sheriffs that they need to shut it down. When we do that, we need to then enact nationwide E-Verify to shut down the draw of illegal jobs and no amnesty. Those are the steps we need. I've already written 2 pieces of legislation to accomplish it. If I'm elected,
thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thank you.
Ms. Vann, where do you stand regarding immigration, and how will you address this issue?
Well, after you look at the Communist Manifesto and Agenda 21, you'll understand that they want one world government, and that means no borders. So of course you don't enforce borders. It's not in your DNA if that's what you believe. We're dealing with people in control of this country that's in their DNA. That's what they believe. They'll never enforce a border. We have to remove them. Then we can enforce the borders. Now, I do believe that we have let a lot of people into this country, and I know there are motels that advertise on the border, come here to have your baby, so that they'll be an American citizen, and so people cross the border just to have a baby. We've let that happen. So we have some obligation to those people, I believe, as far as these anchor babies and their families. That needs to be looked at, and we need to remove that impetus for them to come across the border to have that baby. That would mean dropping the first sentence, I believe, in the 14th Amendment, and we could have that. But in the event, I'm definitely for enforcing the border and no amnesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vann. Mr. Yu, where do you stand regarding immigration, and how will you address this issue?
As an immigrant, by the way, I came to this country illegally. I am totally against the amnesty because that is an insult to the person like me or my family, because we stand the line. They have to stand the line. This is not Banana Republic. This is the United States of America. And Democrat and some Republicans thinking about giving amnesty, giving citizenship. Come on, are they out of their mind? You can't just give citizenship away. They have to earn it. They have to earn that they love this country. If they don't earn it, if they don't want it, we are not welcome. By the way, we have some illegal immigrants coming from the southern border, but we also have a lot of folks coming to this country with a legal visa to come in, but guess what? They're overstayed. They don't want to go back. I think we as a government asking other countries, they need to take care of their citizens' responsibility. We cannot take care of it on ourselves. We need in America, we need to speak up to the other country. They need to start taking care of their people. Just like when we go to other country, they're asking the Americans to take care of American citizens. So we must have taken care of this immigration law once for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Mr. Allen, where do you stand regarding immigration, and how will you address this issue?
Well, one of the reasons I want to go to Washington is that this has been talked about since I can remember. And there's nothing been done there. I have learned a lot about immigration. I learned about it in what happened in the 50s. I learned when we became a problem in 1965. I was in Honduras a few years ago with my daughter on a mission trip, and I did not speak Spanish, and a gentleman walked up to me and he said, "What's your problem?" I said, "Well, we're trying to find everything we need here for a concrete floor and a cardboard house." He spoke perfect English. Said he came to this country, worked up here 20 years, spent all his money, toured me, he took me on a tour of his home down there. And I said, "So you came to America to work and then you went back home?" He said, "Oh, you never intended on staying there." We closed that border, and what I learned is we close that border, if they don't trust our banking system, they're going home. Until we seal the border, I mean, there's not really a lot of debate on this issue. And if we can track the FedEx package from Paris, France to Dublin, Georgia, why in the world can't we seal our border? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. We will begin this third question with Mr. Stone. What do you see as the federal government's role in education policy, and how can the government best support our nation's public school teachers?
Federal government's best role in public education would be to block grant every nickel of federal money we're currently spending back to the states, shut down the U.S. Department of Education, and turn education back over to our states and education. I'll tell you, this is one in which I have a sharp difference with current Republican leadership and with a lot of other folks out there. We keep making the same mistake over and over. We made it with the first President Bush with Goals 2000. That was going to be a wonderful Republican reform of public education. It turned into a great Democrat boondoggle, destroying our system and bringing us things like elementary school books, Heather has two mommies. So we finally got that thing off the books, and what do? We passed No Child Left Behind, which is the same thing rehashed again. We have our current leadership, including members of the Chamber of Commerce, saying we need to get more involved in federal education and start telling our schools what to teach in high school. I say, get the federal government out of public education. It's not included in the Constitution. It's a violation of our constitutional rights. And if we're ever going to go back, as Congress once did, the House did repeal the U.S. Department of Education, but we didn't get it done in the Senate. If we're going to do that again, we got to have new, true, conservative leadership in the House that will let us do it. That's why I made that pledge and made everybody in D.C. so mad at me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Ms. Vann, what do you see as the federal government's role in education policy, and how can the government best support our nation's public school teachers?
The federal government has been responsible for dumbing down our educational system really since the 70s. They really altered the educational system and at the college level. I wondered why, as a teacher of nursing, I saw all those education students getting those high Sigma Cum Laudes and awards, and now I think it's because they just really had dumbed down their program. But we've lost about 30 years of history being taught to the college level, and now they want to, those teachers took over in social studies what the history teachers in my time who were retiring when they left, those social studies teachers had been versed in socialism at the college level. So unfortunately they entered the school system and now they want the Common Core. And the Common Core is nothing more than bringing the socialist content down to your grade school. So in the event, I believe in, as Mr. Stone does, that you get rid of the Department of Education, you keep that money here in the States, and you let the parents and the state work on education and keep the involvement of the federal government out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vann. Mr. Yu, what do you see as the federal government's role in education policy, and how can the government best support our nation's public school teachers?
I believe in America. We owe it to our children, dear children, to preserve this great nation. I just had a first new grandson, April 1st. Education is very important. As education is our future, this nation's future. I want the federal government to stay out of our education system. They need to give back to the power, back to the state and the local with the parents. We as a parent, we know our children, what is their best and their interest of what they can do. So my stand is I want the federal government completely get out of our education system, let them give the power to the state and the local and the parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Mr. Allen, what do you see as the federal government's role in education policy, and how can the government best support our nation's public school teachers?
The federal government has managed to completely not only confuse teachers, but administrators and others in the education system on maybe what to teach and the basic standards of what to teach. Frankly, as far as education is concerned, why do we send $1 to Washington, get 25 cents back, and with all these regulations attached to it, our teachers don't have time to teach because they're spending so much time trying to satisfy the federal government and the requirements of getting that money. We need to keep our dollars here locally. My mom and dad were educators. Now, my dad's passion was farming. I grew up on that farm, but Dad became an educator. And I listened at the kitchen table for about 18 years, them talk about how to solve the problems with education. And, we have great teachers. We just need to let them teach. We have a school there in Augusta that I was privileged to be a part of, called Heritage School. It's a miracle, y'all. We take the losers in the public school system, and they come to this school, and they become winners. That's what education needs to look like. I've been a part of that, and I want to be a part of it in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Dutton, what do you see as the federal government's role in education policy, and how can the government best support our nation's public school teachers?
The best way they can support our public schools is to get out of the way. I completely agree with disbanding, and it's a firm stance that I have of disbanding the Federal Department of Education. My wife is a first grade public school teacher, and what I'm constantly reminded of every day is the standards that they have to teach to. They're not allowed to teach the children in the classroom the way that they feel it needs to be. Bryson, our 6-year-old, comes home, and my wife has to take time to teach him what she feels like he needs to learn because he's not getting it, not because of the fault of the teacher and not to the fault of the school system, but to the fault of the standards that they're being forced to teach the children. And the concern I have is it takes 2 generations to change anything. And currently, right now in this country, we have 2 generations that we've allowed to go through thinking that government is salvation and that government is the answer, that they're entitled to everything, and that if the parents won't do it, the government will. And if we lose this current generation coming through, we're going to lose the country that we've all hold near and dear. So the first thing we have to do is get the federal government out of the way of educating our children and allow us to go back to where we started in this country and allow people that we trust to educate our children the way that they feel needs to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. That moves us to question number 4. Ms. Vann, you will begin answering this question. From 1940 until 1970, entitlement spending was less than 30% of federal spending. Recently, it is approaching 70%. This is the portion of the question that I will repeat. What policies will you implement to create a sustainable way to provide for the least of us without destroying our children's future?
This is a very difficult question because this has been coming for years. Our federal government has been fostering this type of behavior, dependency on them. Really, I mark it back to LBJ. But living off of the government is now seen to be okay. Living in government housing on top of each other is difficult, but it seemed to be okay. We've got a major problem. We have people that don't know anything else, and their educational system hasn't prepared them for anything else. So we need to really revamp and wean people off of government support. And we need education that will really effectively prepare them realistically for jobs. And we need to have those jobs ready. We don't have the jobs available now. The kids are dropping out of school at a high rate and turning to drugs because they're bored. I call it prison prep. I don't call it college prep in high school anymore. So we have a major problem in our educational system. And we have to revise that and change that. And we can get people weaned off of the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van. Mr. Yu, what policies will you implement to create a sustainable way to provide for the least of us without destroying our children's future?
First of all, I approach with the common sense. The common sense tells me that the government, if they get involved with our personal life, and you know that the government get bigger and bigger and bigger, and never stop. First of all, we need to cut all this unnecessary government bureaucracy, such as education, energy, commerce, EPA. Along those 4 departments cost us $186 billion a year. If we can save that money, we can turn around that to our children for the future. This may be a little bit off the subject, but I was watching that the other day that one lady was having 5 children, 3 different fathers, tax-free. She making $144,000 a year. We cannot continue to let that things happen to our society. We must give education to those people to be better themselves. They can do what they can do for the country.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Mr. Allen, what policies will you implement to create a sustainable way to provide for the least of us without destroying our children's future?
Charlie Norwood was a dear friend of mine. I supported Charlie from the beginning. And what's significant about that is in 1994, Charlie Norwood went to the United States Congress. And by 1996, we had welfare reform, and we had balanced the budget except for the unfunded mandates in front of us. Some people say, well, Ken, it wasn't that long ago, folks, that we did that. And like I said, this takes a little common sense. You got to have more people pulling the wagon than you got in the wagon. And that seems to be our issue right now. I can tell you this, in the stimulus package of 2009, which Congressman Barra voted for, every transformation we made in welfare to get people back to work, it reversed every one of those transitions. So now we got 48 million people on nutrition programs. We got 92 million people sitting at home. We got to get people back to work. We got to remove all the restrictions to this economy. That will also make sure that Social Security is there for our seniors who have paid into this system. And then we've also got to deal with health care. We must get rid of Obamacare and come up with a solution that is not only efficient, but restores the relationship between the doctor
Thank you,
and the patient.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you.
Mr. Dutton, what policies will you implement to create a sustainable way to provide for the least of us without destroying our children's future?
First of all, I don't believe government's the answer. For far too long in this country, we've tried to allow government to take over anything that we don't want to do ourselves. And if you go back and any problem you face, you have to go back where you started and figure out where you went wrong. And if you look at history, the problem that we have in this country is the same thing that we saw in Rome and the collapse of Rome. We saw the government try to win the people over, win the poor over, win the oppressed over, instead of allowing the Christian movement to take hold. Because the Christian movement were taking the poor and raising them up, teaching them and helping them get on their feet while ministering the word of Christ. And Rome took over that role, and what you saw was refugees from outside of Rome come in, and you saw the collapse of that country. We're doing the same thing in this country. We have the weakest border, and people are coming in here and gaming the system. Government can't do it. It's going to take the citizens of this country, the Christians in this country, to help the people that need the help, but to get government completely out of that business. And the concern that I have is it's going to happen on a federal level because of what we've seen in state legislature. We worked on legislation to correct this and try to address this, and we saw a roadblock.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Stone, what policies will you implement to create a sustainable way to provide for the least of us without destroying our children's future?
Well, the answer to this is pretty much the same as it is on education, healthcare, and everything. We need to get the federal government out of the way of the private sector to start building jobs in the economy again. We have a very fundamental, foundational problem right now in the country, in that in so many states around the country, welfare pays more than starting jobs. Now, that is a huge problem that we've got to address. Specifically, we need to freeze welfare benefits for 10 years while allowing the private sector economy a chance to gain back up and raise wages until suddenly we're in a position that work pays substantially more than welfare. If we do that, we'll start moving some people off of welfare and onto work and creating jobs and paying taxes again. Nationally, we have to do that. The Social Security situation we've got to address that in a reasonable way that doesn't cut people's benefits and doesn't raise taxes. We have people in Washington now that are willing to work on that on both sides of the aisle if we can come up with something reasonable. But what we have to do also is start building this district's economy again. When John Barrow took office in 2004, we were slated to receive 2 new interstates for this district that would greatly stimulate the economy across our entire district. New nuclear reactors. We have a congressman who's let that die on the vine when we had broad bipartisan support for both. We need to stimulate the national economy by getting the federal government out of the way. We need to stimulate our local economy again as well. Thank you.
We're on question number 5 now. Mr. you will begin answering this question. What is your position on tort reform?
Tort reform. That's a good question. Just like in Obamacare, you know we all have that is a bad program. Within that, we must reform completely that tort system, because the doctor, they have so much that they go through the different liability and this and that. They worry about maybe somebody, maybe some patient may be suing. They have so many that cost so much for the doing business as a practice of the doctor. And not only the medical field, but it is overall. We somehow, this legal system is completely out of control, because the business, as I had a small business myself for the last 20-some years. Here I am, I'm trying to making the payroll, and I'm trying to make it the company, but yet I have to follow all this unnecessary, well, sometimes it's necessary, but we know how to be taking care of our employee, such as we worry about the EPA and the OSHA and all this regulation after the regulation. So we must reform this tort system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Mr. Allen, what is your position on tort reform?
Well, for all my attorney friends out there, I want to tell you, we've got the greatest justice system in the world. And I want to thank you for that. It's not perfect, but it works, and our founders worked hard on it. But we got some problems in this economy, and part of that problem is tort reform. You know, this president said he was going to reduce the cost of health care. The only way to reduce the cost of health care is to give the doctors the opportunity to practice medicine again. Right now, because of the legal aspects of practicing medicine, these doctors have to order multiple tests so that they don't have to pay enormous sums for malpractice insurance, which they're already paying, by the way. I was down in Texas recently with some friends down there. I want to see how things work in Texas. You know, Texas has implemented a lot of tort reform. And every insurance company in the country is playing in Texas. I asked about the health insurance premium. I said, no, they haven't really gone up in Texas. And you see what the business environment is down there. If the tort reform works, we need to work on it. We need to come to some mutual agreement on it. Yes, consumers need to be protected. The patients need to be protected. But y'all, let's just use good old common sense.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Dutton, what is your position on tort reform?
Yeah, that was my question. Are there any attorneys in the room? Every time I've heard this brought up, it's always differing opinions in the legal profession. And the biggest thing that I see is, instead of the tort reform, I agree we have to come to an agreement on that, and that's the challenge, especially when you're talking about being in a group of 435 where the largest makeup are attorneys that have differing opinions on this. But the problem we have is government control in the healthcare profession right now. You cannot, we're going to lose our independent doctors. It's going to be a pointless discussion to talk about tort reform in the next 3 years if Affordable Care stays around, because you'll have an entire system built on government control in healthcare, and what you're going to have is salary-based doctors. Independent doctors will be a thing of the past. So the first thing we have to do before we can ever try to get the attorneys in the room to agree on tort reform is to get rid of government control in healthcare. And we have to cut off any form of implementation of Obamacare, Affordable Care Act in this country. And we have to do it again. We have to go back to where we started and get government out of the way and allow the innovation and allow the independent doctors to do what they know is right in the healthcare profession.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. Mr. Stone, what is your position on tort reform?
We need tort reform. Most of our tort reform measures that have been successful have occurred at the state level, as Rick was mentioning about Texas. A lot of states around the country have enacted tort reforms there because most of our tort laws are state laws. Where we really need the reform at the federal level is in addressing unlimited punitive damages. That's the biggest cost driver for the healthcare profession in trying to determine reasonable malpractice insurance rates. It's a driver for most of our other industries in which you can factor how much a premium should be to cover tort losses if you have compensatory damages to pay back the amount that's been lost through whatever accident occurred. But what's the unknown factor is that $4 billion for spilling a cup of hot coffee in your lap. How do you factor that into premiums? How do you factor in massive unlimited punitive damages? And there's where we need to focus our federal efforts in accomplishing that. Several years back, we came very close in Congress to coming through with a bipartisan agreement. I think the Democrats had it set at $1 million on punitive damage caps. The Republican side held out for $500,000 and no deal was reached. But we know there is a deal that can be done, and that's one of the biggest factors involved in driving down health care costs, premiums across the board, is addressing those unlimited punitive damages where there's no way that business and industry or healthcare professionals can factor for that. That's an area we need to address.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thank you.
Ms. Vann, what is your position on tort reform?
Well, ever since I entered my practice of nursing, I graduated in '74 from University of Nebraska, we needed tort reform. Why haven't we had it? Why have doctors had to do all of this defensive medicine? Almost half the costs are due to doing defensive medicine. You have to wonder, what was the rationale for no tort reform? Was it the lobbyists for the attorneys, or was it because they wanted to remove the property of the physicians? In the event, we're now faced with a new situation, Obamacare. And the physicians that I know, they don't like the fact that the government's going to tell them how much they can charge, and the fact that they went to school for so many years, different specialties, they're all going to get paid alike, and so on eventually. So most of your physicians are looking for an exit strategy and planning on that. And looking to the ones that have already retired and saying, well, why did you know that you should get out then? How did you know? So we are in a dire situation. where the government wants control over us, and the best way to do it is through health care. And so in the event, this argument would be good if we got rid of our current leadership, which I'm all for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van. Our next series of questions will be asked in a little different manner. These are going to be rapid-fire questions that require only a yes or no answer. I will ask the question one time, and then I will mention the name of the person who should start this question, and then you should move on down the line. Keystone Pipeline, will you fight for it? Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Mr. Dutton.
Yes.
Mr. Stone.
Yes.
Ms. Van.
Yes.
Mr. Yu.
Most definitely.
Number 2, would you vote for an increase to the debt ceiling if this arises while you are in office? Mr. Dutton.
No.
Mr. Stone.
No.
Ms. Van.
No.
Mr. Yu.
Absolutely no.
Mr. Allen.
No.
Question number 3, should all bills be posted online for some reasonable time before voted on by the House? Mr. Stone.
Yes, they are required to.
Mr. Van.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Van, forgive me. Mr. Yu.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Mr. Dutton.
Absolutely.
Given the time to do so, will you personally read the entire bill before you vote on it? Ms. Van.
Yes.
Mr. Yu.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Mr. Dutton.
I have a 4-year history of it, yes.
Mr. Stone.
Yes.
Question number 5. Will you be in support of having new leadership in the House if elected? Mr. Yu.
I will know when I get there.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Mr. Dutton.
I agree with Mr. Yu. I'll make that assessment when I'm there.
Mr. Stone.
Could you repeat the question?
Will you be in support of having new leadership in the House if elected?
I've already pledged to throw out all the current leaders we have.
Ms. Van.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I was going to have to correct you because of these one-word answers. Thank goodness we got to the last question first.
I like to follow the rules.
Yes, thank you. We're going to move on to our next question. And we will start with you, Mr. Allen. With the recent spotlight on medical marijuana in Georgia, what is your position regarding this issue?
The medical part of the marijuana is very different than the drug itself. From a medical standpoint, I think we need to use whatever drug we need to help folks with various illnesses. The one thing that I'm totally against is the legalization of marijuana. And let me tell you why. If you think we got 92 million people sitting at home right now, you wait till we legalize marijuana. Who knows how many people we're going to have sitting at home? And the reason for that is we drug test in our company, and the reason we drug test is because it reduced our workers' compensation premiums drastically. We have a 0.7 mod rate. Because of that, y'all, there won't be any working folks in this country if we legalize this drug. That's my position. Again, medically, I don't want the medical thing to lead to legalization. And I think that's, I think from what the physicians tell me is that the drug itself that's used for medical purposes does not contain the same elements that are in the drug used for purposes of social endearment.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Dutton, with the recent spotlight on medical marijuana in Georgia, what is your position regarding this issue?
Well, there's a communication problem to start with on this issue. Under no circumstances should we legalize marijuana in this state. You can go to Colorado if you want to see the damage that it does, or just sit back and watch. But what we faced in this state and what we need to address cigarettes in the state was actually the oil that's taken out in the laboratory and used for children that have problems with seizures. And we took that issue up in the Georgia legislature and tried to get that passed to allow those families to have that tool in place. But it had nothing to do with actual marijuana. It was medical cannabis oil. And the communication problem we have is the media has run with it saying it's medical marijuana. So, you know, we definitely need to try to provide that option for these parents that are having to face to uproot their families and move to Colorado or move to other states that are allowing that oil to be used in that means. But under no means do we need to legalize marijuana in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. Mr. Stone, with the recent spotlight on medical marijuana in Georgia, what is your position regarding this issue?
In Georgia, the medical marijuana issue is a medical issue, but that's not the main problem we're looking at here. This goes to the heart of what's wrong with our country right now and our biggest challenge. We have an administration that has decided it's not going to enforce drug laws anymore selectively wherever it pleases. We have state after state legalizing marijuana under current federal law. That is illegal. And we have an Obama administration that, just like on the issue of illegal immigration, has decided they'll use prosecutorial discretion to say, we're just not going to enforce the law. We'll enforce the laws we like. We'll refuse to enforce the laws we don't. And they basically overturned the laws of the United States and the ability of Congress to do its job and simply blow past our current drug laws. Now, our problem is we don't have leadership that'll stand up for that. We have an administration on the verge of becoming a dictatorship in which our own House leadership won't stand against it. They'll complain, they'll hold a news conference, and then the issue goes away, and we've got legalized marijuana in spite of Congress voting to block that, and that being against the law. There's the issue with legalization of marijuana. We need a Congress that will stand up for our current laws, and to do that, we've got to have leadership that will stand up to the administration. That's why I made that pledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Ms. Vann, with the recent spotlight on medical marijuana in Georgia, what is your position regarding this issue?
Well, having witnessed children have intractable seizures, anything that will help them, I am for. So I definitely would have voted for the medical marijuana. And particularly it was going to be, as Ellis Dutton said, an oil-based product. It was something to be taken by mouth. So in the event, the illegal drug trade, I witnessed it, and in the event, it is, as Mr. Stone said, our laws need to be enforced. You know, when China became communist, heroin use went up. Heroin would make the person more satisfied with limited circumstances, make them more happy at just farming a little piece of field, and change their perspective so they weren't unhappy with the situation created by their authoritarian government. So that's been a technique for many years to help people adjust to an authoritarian government and allowing these illegal drugs to take over. So I'm against legalization, but definitely anything that would help a child. I'm for.
Thank you, Ms. Vann. Mr. Yu, with the recent spotlight on medical marijuana in Georgia, what is your position regarding this issue?
As a former law enforcement officer, I always have a problem with any kind of drug, marijuana or anything else. However, the federal law is prohibiting for the marijuana to be legal. But yet, our current administrator, they want to pick and choose which one law they want to pass. They don't want to, like Eric Holder, well, we don't want to enforce. These people are just completely out of their mind. And the law is a law. You can't just pick and choose which one the law you want to enforce or which law they don't want to enforce. However, if they're talking about the medical use only, here's again, you got to remember, this Democrat or liberal, they always want to just a little bit at a time. So when we start giving a little bit at a time, before you know, they're asking for whole body. So I am really have a problem with the given the legalization for the marijuana, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. It is now time for our closing statements. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes, and the same policy continues with the yellow and the red card. We'll begin with Mr. Allen.
Are we going to go in reverse order for closing? Usually we do that.
We will be happy to.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Y'all want to vote? I'm kidding. Mr. Yu, would you begin, please?
Mr. Allen, he cried again.
Like I said, I like the rules, and the rules said you
Here we go.
and finish on the other, and finish with it.
25 years ago, we have a President Ronald Reagan and Johnny Cash and Bob Hope. Today, we have a President Barack Obama with John Barrow. No Cash, no Hope. I want to deliver your voice in Congress and boldly say, let us restore the promise of the American dream by protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States of America, securing the blessing of our liberty with a strong military and secure border, putting the power back in the hands of the people, we the people, to govern themselves, unleashing the free market to develop sound, physically responsible solutioning, education, energy, and healthcare, and most importantly, bring back the millions of blue-collar and high-tech business from abroad. In my heart, I know that America's best days are still ahead of her. Before you ask them, I want to serve the great state of Georgia and 12th District as your next United States Congressman. With your help, and by God's divine grace, we will restore the promise of America. Let me tell you, I may look a little different than you, and I talk a little different than you, and I have a little different accent, but I am same American like you, and I love Georgia like you. Vote for you, for you. Washington in the U-turn. I'm the only person can beat the John Barrow once for all.
Thank you, Mr. Yu.
God bless you.
Ms. Van, would you begin your closing statement, please?
Thank you all for listening. I feel privileged to have been a candidate. I think it should be a requirement of every American citizen to run. Nobody works harder for change in this country than the candidate. That's what I found in 2010. I didn't run in 2012 and I felt guilty. So I'm back running now. I think any one of us loves this country. Any one of us will follow the Constitution of the United States. We have a government now that's going the other way. They are following the Communist Manifesto. And if you don't believe me, pick up my book and take it home and look at it for yourself. If there's one reason, one good reason, I think, to impeach, that would be it. And I want to see Nancy Pelosi impeached. I want to see Barack Obama impeached. And I want to see Harry Reid impeached. Now, the easy way to keep them out of power is to make sure that the Senate goes our way. And also keep the House in the Republican side. We do have some Republicans that need to be retired soon, but we definitely need to take care of that Democrat leadership ASAP, as soon as possible, stat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Van. Mr. Stone.
Plans, pledges, and platitudes. That's what y'all have heard tonight from all of us up here. I think we're all equal on the platitudes of the fact our country's going in the wrong direction. It has to be changed. Our district's going in the wrong direction. It has to be changed. And we have to win back our seat from John Barrow. But this election, this primary, is not about John Barrow. His name's not going to be on the ballot when you go out to early vote on April 28th. It's going to be the 5 of us. And here's the choice you have to make. This party has got to change. This election, this primary election, is about the heart and soul of the Republican Party. Are we going to be a party that has a voice vote on the floor like we did last week, in which we raised spending and added on to Obamacare without a single member being required to put their name on that? Or are we going to have a party that will stand up for the Constitution, the rule of law, conservative principles, and be the kind of party we can be proud of again? If we're going to do that, we got to have new leadership. It won't do us a bit of good to win this seat back from John Barrow and have that same crowd in control up there in which they cave into the Obama administration on every issue in the rule of law. We've got to have new leaders. That's why I took the hard step last September and said, I will vote for new leadership in the House. Now, if you're not willing to make that pledge, what you're doing is you're leaving your options open. You're talking platitudes, but you're not giving any specifics, no plans, no pledges. You're leaving your options open. We can't afford to leave our options open anymore. We have to take back our party, and until we take back our party, we can't move this country forward. We simply have to do it. We have young, dynamic, true conservative Republican leadership in the wings, waiting to move forward into the Speaker's chair, into the Whip's chair, and we've got to have new members of Congress willing to stand up and make it happen and fight for our Constitution.
Thank
If
you,
I'm
Mr. Stone.
I'll vote for just that.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you for being here tonight. We haven't had much of a debate. I think that we all agree on what's got to be done. And I never inspired to be an elected official in my life, but I have been devoted for the last 4 years of doing what I believe was right. And I have a proven conservative record, a constitutional record of serving the people that elected me for the last 4 years. I also have an example of challenging leadership, whether it's specific issues like water rights or ethics reform, or many other issues, healthcare exchanges that we faced my freshman year. Not to mention challenging for positions of leadership. And because I took that challenge, because I knew what was right, and I communicated and tried to win the hearts and minds of others to do what was right, we now have new leadership in the House. Representative Matt Hatchett is now serving as our caucus chair because of that effort. And I'll tell you that we're sound in the state legislature with a movement that's happening right now because of committed men and women doing what they knew was right, not playing politics, but voting their principles and following their convictions. And I truly believe that I'm in this race, if you'll take the time to look, to give the example of that commitment and that record to match up against John Barrow in November. And I'm the only candidate in this race that has the ability to show you who I am and who I will be, not tell you what I will do. So please take the time to research each one of us, lift our names up specifically in prayer, and make sure that we bring this thing together on the other side of this primary, because we have to remove John Barrow as a representative of this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beckman. Mr. Allen.
On May 20th, you're going to hire your congressman. And I agree, you need to look at each one of us. I have not served in elected office. One of the things I loved about Charlie Norwood, and one of the reasons I supported him when he came in, when I was in his partner's dental chair, and told me, he said, I'm going to need your help. I said, what are you getting ready to do? He said, I want to run for Congress. And like Charlie, like these people have said to me, I said to Charlie, have you lost your mind? And he said, no. He said, I'm sick and tired. And I'm mad. And something's got to be done. He shut down his dental practice. That was a tremendous sacrifice. And that's why I supported Charlie. And that's why the Norwood family, I'm pleased to say that the Norwood family has endorsed our candidacy here. And we talked about leadership. You know, right now, we got self-preserving or self-preservation leadership in Washington. That's the problem. You need to look at what we've been involved in. I've been in the private sector, and we talked about the private sector here a lot tonight. I've been in the private sector, folks, for 37 years. My wife and I took our savings when we were 25 years old and started a small business. And we're still here today. In fact, that business, despite its horrible is doing okay. But it could sure do a lot better if we could get Washington out of the way. I've served on a hospital board. I know a lot about healthcare. I was chairman of the hospital board for 9 years. I've worked with doctors. A group of us started a bank. I've gone through that the last few years in the banking industry. I know the problems in the banking industry, and I know what it's going to take to get this economy going. We got to get the banks loaning money again to small business people. Small business creates 60% of the jobs in this country. We have got to get back to faith, family, and freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let me say, this has been quite an experience. I can tell you one thing, I'm voting Republican. No doubt about that. And let me apologize to each of you. It's not my nature to interrupt people like that. But we do have a time limit. When I preach and it's 12 o'clock, they get up and walk out. So be grateful that they didn't do that tonight. So thank you for being here. On behalf of the 12th District Republican Party, thank you again. Thank you for Catherine and John putting all this together. You are dismissed. Good night.